Okay, welcome back to Between the Pages Book Chat, and we're back to you live from our little break. And today's guest is Robert Williscroft, who's a sci-fi author, and he's here to talk about his book Slingshot, which is book one of the Starchild Trilogy. So I'm going to turn it over to him now and let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest. The Starchild Trilogy starts with Slingshot, which is the story of the building of the largest machine in human history. Let me give you just a little bit of background about how this came to be. I spent a year at the Geographic South Pole in charge of National Science Foundation atmospheric projects. As I headed down to the South Pole, I took a handful of scientific papers with me. One of those papers was written by a scientist, Keith Lofstrom, and it was about constructing a large scale machine that could move freight and passengers into orbit without rockets. And it could be done with today's technology. It's somewhat similar to a space elevator concept, except the space elevator cannot be built with today's technology because we don't have material that is strong enough to carry its own weight all the way up to geosynchronous orbit. So this fascinated me. And when I came out from the pole, I looked Keith up and we spent several days together discussing the engineering and the science behind his ideas. And then we laid out the outline for a book that would tell the story of the constructing of the first such space launch loop between the equatorial islands of Baker Island and the name escapes me at the moment. It's another island about 1,900 kilometers away. Anyway, this is the construction of the Space Launch Loop, and it looks at the people. Jarvis Island is the name of the island. It looks at the people, the three main engineers who are running the show, two men and a woman. The Margot Jackson, the woman, plays a major role. She's a diver, and she's in charge of all of the underwater operations that relate to the constructing of this mammoth machine. That's basically what the story is about. They're opposed by eco-terrorists who do their best to prevent the project from taking place. There are financial issues, there are personnel issues, and there are the kinds of issues that come simply when you're trying to do something this huge and this massive. It's 2,000 kilometers long, so you're talking about a very, very large structure.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the main characters. What are they like? Their personalities, that sort of thing.
Well, Margot she was chosen not because she's female, but because she was the best in her category of engineering. Nobody was better than she was, but she's not entirely certain that's why she was picked. So she wrestles with the idea that she may be in over her head, that she's there because she's female, and this lends depth to her character and helps to understand why she makes some of the decisions that she makes. Alex, who's overall in charge of the overall project, is one of these amazing guys, kind of maybe a little bit like Elon Musk, who just seems to know how to make the right decisions at the right time and gather the right people around him to make things work. And he finds himself frustrated by the oppositions that come up against him from the eco-terrorists and from others that don't make any sense. From his perspective, why would anybody try to stop this when this is the most eco-friendly, benign project that will open up space to every man and woman on the planet? So why would anybody oppose it? And he's dealing with these things, and they give him an emotional challenge. The third party, Klaus, is a German engineer who's in charge of the OTEC power systems. And he is one of those guys who can just handle everything without letting it get to him. And probably his greatest joy in life is a stein of excellent German beer and a pretty lady sitting beside him talking about what he's doing. But these three together form the nucleus for the overall project.
Okay, sounds fascinating. Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry guys if you're hearing an echo on my end. I don't know why, but it seems to be coming and going. So anyone listening, sorry about the echo. But anyway, back to the you obviously are an engineer by trade, by your study. So what sort of background did that bring to writing hard sci-fi?
That's a good question. My science fiction is what is often called hard science fiction. That is, the science and the engineering are either completely correct by what we know today, or they are reasonable projections from what we know and can do today into the near future, so that, well, maybe computers can't do right now what they do in Slingshot. Next week, they probably will be able to, especially the way computer technology is moving forward. And let me add another note here. The person who is in charge of the whole project, who put it together, who is shepherding it and running the project out of Seattle, was modeled after a person in real life. The first chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission back under Ronald Reagan was Dixie Lee Ray. She was the former governor of the state of Washington, and before that was my zoology professor. She was a very interesting woman who managed to look at the world as it is rather than the way that she or anyone else might wish it to be. So she found herself often in conflict with the media and with often her colleagues. But in the end, she was always proved right. And she is an excellent model for the person who runs this program.
Oh, that's cool. So what was the hardest scene for you to write in the book? Or type of scene?
The part of the construction is placing very large anchors in water that's about 5 kilometers deep. These anchors have to go to the bottom with enough speed to bury themselves in the bottom, and then they project wings out of the sides of the concrete to hold them into the bottom. And I had initially written a chapter about how these are put in the water and how long it takes them to get to the bottom and what happens, so the reader gets a sense of what's going on. And my wife, who is also an engineer and who edits my writing, came to this chapter and she said, "What are you talking about? That doesn't work that way." And so I said, "Well, I think it does." And she says, "Nah, they're not gonna fall that fast. There's going to be water resistance and this and that and the other thing. We better do some math here." And I agreed. And so we sat down, I with my computer and spreadsheet, and she with her computer and spreadsheet, approaching the problem from different directions purposefully so that we could compare our answers and either find out who's right or who's wrong or what the real answer is. And what we found out was we were both wrong. They actually fell far faster than either one of us had thought. And so I had to change how I wrote the story and incorporate this. And it turns out to be a fascinating chapter because they actually exceed the speed of sound in water as they drop because they're so large and so heavy.
Yeah, well, that gives the rest of us a little hope because even the scientists have to do hardcore research. Okay, so what was your favorite scene that you wrote in the book?
I have a character in the book. She's not a main character. She comes from South Carolina, from the islands offshore. She is an oil worker, a diver, female, obviously, black, and tough as the day is long. And she finds herself involved with a couple of dolphins, and they melt her heart. And this tough as iron, kick-ass lady who is getting stuff done way better than a male in her capacity probably could, just because she's so tough, finds herself dealing with these dolphins in a way that almost breaks her heart. And that was so much fun to write.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I love it when the contradictory character scenes come together. They're fun. So tell us a little bit about some of the secondary characters.
One character named April Stebbins, April spelt with a Y, is a diver and a medic. She comes out of the commercial diving world as a diving medic, and she provides a delightful counterpoint when she shows up, because she is unabashedly sexy, as good as a person can get in what she does, because nobody is hired on this project unless they are at the top of their own spectrum. So she is the best diving medic out there, and she happens to bring with her elements that one doesn't normally find in this kind of an environment. So that makes her a lot of fun, and she ends up showing up in a series of short novelettes that I wrote that employ what's called Slingshot, this structure that was built, and she shows up again just because of her sparkling personality.
Yeah, some characters are like that. So tell us a little bit about the conflicts in the story.
The main antagonist is a fellow who has decided that what's going on violates everything he believes in about nature and about the earth and about the environment. He's not the brightest guy in the world, but he's charismatic, and he can bring people around him who can carry out what he wants. Without his knowledge, he's being manipulated by, it turns out, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but it's okay. He's being manipulated by elements from North Korea. He has no idea, and they're working through several shells, and he gathers around him a group of young people whom he has convinced are that this project is dangerous and is going to destroy the environment. And so they're out there with lots and lots of money, causing serious damage to the project as it's going forward. And so he plays a role right through almost the last page of the book.
Okay, so do you have a favorite character in the book?
Oh yeah, Margot Jackson, the lead female character, without a doubt.
Yeah, the one that was based on your teacher.
No. No. This one.
Oh,
in fact, sorry. I'll let you know, she was kind of based on my wife. She's tall. She's blonde. She's engineer. She's good looking. She's smart as heck. And as I described earlier.
Okay, so sorry about that. Makes up.
That's okay.
Okay, so you write sci-fi, obviously, but are there any other genres that you'd like to kind of explore in other books?
Yes. I have a series that I've been working on for quite a while. It's called the Mac McDowell Mission Series. It starts off with a book called Operation Ivy Bells. Back during the Cold War, before I went to the South Pole, quite a while before I went to the South Pole, I was a young Navy officer on submarines. I've spent a lot of time on submarines, And I found myself, through a series of circumstances, pulled into the Man in the Sea program, which was a training ground for saturation diving. And eventually, I found myself in charge of a group of divers. We locked out of a nuclear submarine on the floor of the Sea of Okhotsk between Kamchatka Peninsula and northern Siberia and tapped into Soviet underwater communications cables. This was a huge intelligence coup that nobody knew about for decades thereafter. We couldn't talk about it. But once the curtain was lifted, I wrote a novel that tells that story. It brings in the characters. I kind of mix the characters up a little bit so as to honor people's privacy. But it tells the story pretty much as it happened. It is a bestseller, even though it came out several years ago. It still sells well. Operation Ivy Bells. The second book in that series is Operation Icebreaker, and in this book, the Navy puts together a new kind of a special operations submarine, similar to the submarine we all know of as the USS Jimmy Carter. Mac, the hero from the first book, and his crew of divers deploy on this sub, and they go up underneath the Arctic ice pack to lay acoustic arrays under the Arctic ice pack. They're dogged by Soviet submarines during the entire time, and the story is the conflict between them and the Soviets and between them and nature as they're laying these arrays. The third book, which is right now in pre-sale, called Operation Arctic Sting, it'll be officially released on August 4, picks up where Operation Icebreaker left off, and in Arctic Sting, my heroes capture an abandoned high-tech Russian Soviet submarine, an Alpha submarine, man it and pilot it through the Arctic under the ice, all the way through the Arctic to the East Coast, where they take it to the electric boat shipyards of General Dynamics in Groton, Connecticut. And of course, the Soviets don't want their sub to end up in American hands like that. And so the entire time, for all the way through the Arctic, the Soviets are either trying to get it back or sink it. And that sets up for a really exciting read.
Yeah, sounds like a good series of military thrillers there. So should be sure to check them out. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let you tell everyone where they can find you and your books.
Okay, you can find me very easily. Robert Williscroft.com. You can see my name at the bottom of the screen. Just take the space out of it. RobertWilliscroft.com. That will take you to all of my books. You have you're asked to sign up on to a mailing list when you first go there. I would welcome that. You won't get spammed. You'll just get occasional announcements and stuff about what I'm writing. So RobertWilliscroft.com. And if you can't remember that, just Google Robert Williscroft. I'm all over the internet.
Okay, so I'd like to thank you for being here, being a guest today. It was a fascinating chat, and you certainly led a fascinating life. So, and Between the Pages, we'll be back next weekend with 2 more authors, so join us then. And that's all for now. Bye.
Goodbye.